everybody, to our great audience watching on Zoom. Thank you for joining us for this latest Trunk Nation virtual invasion. We are in Los Angeles at the SiriusXm studios, and I am super psyched for what's happening today because Slash, featuring Myles Kennedy and The Conspirators, are going to join us for an entire 2-hour show. We're going to involve you in the show by taking your questions via Zoom for the guys. We're going to talk about their great new album, 4, which is coming out on February 11th, and we're going to get some exclusive live performances. And we're going to get it started by going back to the previous album, Living the Dream, and that's how we're going to get things started on the set of music you're about to hear. First song up is Drivin' Rain. Enjoy. Slash, featuring Myles Kennedy and The Conspirators, live from SiriusXM. All right, welcome everybody to the latest Trunk Nation LA invasion, virtually once again. Actually, the very, very first LA invasion we ever did was from the Rainbow with this guy sitting right next to me. Good to see you, Slash.
That was the first one?
It was the first one. You were the first guy that ever did the Rainbow thing with me.
It was a fitting place to do it, though.
It was. A lot of history there for you, right?
Very much. I took my dad there the other day.
Recently?
Yeah, because he goes back to the Rainbow, too. So, like, a couple generations, because my kid goes. So 3 generations of stalwart rock and roll Rainbow fans.
Well, you know, I want to ask you about something related to that here in a second, but let me go down the line here. And, of course, you just heard Driving Rain from the previous album, Living the Dream, and coming up, you guys will hear 3 songs from the outstanding new album, 4, which is coming out on February 11th. We'll get into all that in a second. Let me go down the horn here. Of course, we have Myles Kennedy. Good to see you, bud.
It's great to see you.
And Todd Dammit Kearns there in the middle. And Brent Fitz. Good to see you.
My neighbors.
We're kind of Vegas neighbors, yeah. And the king of Vegas, the man who's actually from Vegas.
I'll take that.
Frank Sidoris on the end. Good to see all you guys. I want to ask you though something. You said you went to the Rainbow, which I imagine is not an easy thing for you to do because, holy shit, it's Slash, dude. You know. But let me ask you. I'm really curious about this with super recognizable people. Has the mask mandate been the greatest thing that's ever happened to you?
It definitely makes you less recognizable.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you been able to do things during this mask thing that normally you'd never be able to do? Because you put your hair up, you put the mask, you could probably do some stuff.
No, I do the same shit that I always do, but I do notice I feel a little bit more comfortable at the market.
You do?
Yeah. So I'm walking around the aisles, I don't get as many stares, you know.
Because I would imagine that for super recognizable famous people, the mask mandate is something you're never going to give up. You're going to be rocking a mask the rest of your life.
Yeah, right? No, it is cool. I have to say, I did notice the difference.
Yeah, for sure. So this album, 4, I almost feel like I was kind of there a little bit while you were making it because we were all texting each other while you were making it, and you had the YouTube nights that was going on. What Fitz is going like this.
Oh, in Nashville.
Yeah,
oh
we were
God,
all texting.
That's right. You were part of that.
Yes,
that was a scene.
So what happened there during making the record? Because we know, Slash, we'll start with you. We know that everybody got sick, first of all.
You should probably
right?
talk to patient 0.
Well, Myles was the super spreader?
Unfortunately, yes.
So, Myles, take us through this. What happened during the making of this record? Because you did it at the height of COVID, right?
Yeah. I think so. We were trying to be real careful, and at the time there were still things we didn't know about how all this worked. So we decided not to fly there. And we were like, well, let's all basically meet in Vegas, and then we'll take a bus and we'll go to the studio. And so I drove from Spokane, where I live, with some friends, and met these guys in Vegas. And we were all tested before we got on the bus that night. Everybody was free and clear. Then we drive, 2 days. We get to Nashville. And before we can even set foot in the studio, we test one more time. Everybody's cool. And we start making the record, and suddenly something just didn't feel right. And, yeah, it was, it definitely took me by surprise, and it took us all eventually, except for Frank. You got out
We
unscathed.
sent Frank home. Go, get out now while you still can.
Wait, so you got it too, Slash?
Well, out of these guys, I was the last one to get it. So Myles called me. I was in the studio. We'd finished the record. Now it was time to do some background vocals, a couple overdubs, whatnot. And so Myles calls me, and I know he's in the building. So he calls me in the studio, and it's like, it's odd. So I pick up the phone, and he goes, dude, I tested positive. And it was just sort of like your sort of heart jumps out of your mouth, right? And I was like, okay, all right. So the record's done at this point, so it's not going to be a huge like issue. But then everybody had to test again, and Brent and Todd go down. So those guys go into quarantine, and one of the engineers at the studio as well. So Dave and Eddie's the other engineer, and Dave Cobb and myself start basically doing rough mixes since pretty much everything's done. And then I went and got tested, or I got vaccinated in Nashville, and then 2 days later, or the next day, I tested positive. So now I'm in quarantine. But since I got vaccinated, I didn't have any symptoms, so I'm just kicking back at the house. These guys are starting to feel better, so they start doing the background vocals in the guest house around the same time that you guys were all sort of texting and talking and watching YouTube videos, which I witnessed.
Right, well, you bailed, so I knew we were going to lose you. Not to get too inside here, but we're all texting. These guys are having like these YouTube nights where Fitz, jump in here, where like you guys all went around and like everybody had a night where they could pick whatever they wanted to play, right?
It was just like we were all hoping, please, Slash, don't come out into the living room here and see what we're watching. But definitely the night that Kiss Meets the Phantom was
I
going
came out
through,
for that one, right?
That was the night Slash was like, what are you guys watching?
Well, the funniest thing about that is that we're all texting, and like Myles is like, I found a Blue Murder video, and like we're all going back and forth on stuff. But then when I think it was Brent said to me, I think we're going to run Kiss Meets the Phantom, I go, that's when you're going to lose Slash. And remember, I sent you an Aerosmith bootleg, and like 10 minutes later, I get a text from you going, this bootleg's really cool, I'm listening to it. And I go, I knew it, he bailed on the room. He's listening to Aerosmith in his bedroom instead of watching Kiss Meets the Phantom.
That's right, the Aerosmith bootleg. Yeah, it was like, every time I would come out of the bedroom and go into the sort of, I don't know, living room or den or whatever that was, it was like going into the 80s in Hollywood. It was just like all these bands that I haven't seen or heard of in years, right? And they're all on there alive and well, and this was all night long for days. Oh yeah. So it was festive, you know. But anyway, so just to finish up the whole thing, so everybody got better, and then we went and finished up all their stuff, and then mixed the record together manually, no automation. So you take your hands, put them on the faders, press play, and you do it. And if you fuck up, you have to do it again. That kind of deal. It was cool.
Well, that ties into the guy who produced this record, which is the first time I think any of you have probably worked with him, which is Dave Cobb, who is known for, I've met Dave a couple times, and I'm fully aware of the work and the bands that he's done in the rock world, of course, but he has a completely unique and old school approach in making records. Can you talk about what that experience was like, Slash, and why you decided to go with him?
Well, okay, I was looking for a new producer for this record, and I asked some people I trust, whose opinions I trust, you know, and I said, give me some good contemporary rock producers, and I had a list of 4, and Dave Cobb was one of them. And so I checked out his discography, and he was doing a lot of country music, but the thing about his country music, it was all the really cool, down-to-earth, honest country music that had some soul. So that was a bonus. And then the thing that clinched it was he did Rival Sons, which is one of my favorite sounding bands of the last 15 years. So anyway, so I called him up and we talked, and he's like, I do my Dave Cobb impression, you know, Slash, I just want to do a rock and roll record, you know, and we record it live, you know, and I was like, yeah. So that's what we did. He said, we're going to do it so a la Glenn Johns, and just set up in the studio with the amps and everything. And I've been trying to do that since the 80s. No producer would ever let me do it, where you just, you know, set up like you do in a gig and record it, you know. So it was fun.
Did you record to tape? Did you record on tape?
Yeah.
You did. So you really like, Myles, what was it like for you as a singer recording that way and working with Dave?
Well, it was interesting because...
And with COVID.
Yeah, well, that was the hard part.
Did it impact your voice?
Oh,
and
hell yeah.
Because we should mention, too, that for all of you, it sounds like, except Slash, you got it pre-vax, right? You guys weren't vaxxed.
They weren't available
I was
yet.
vaxxed.
No
We
vax
were-
yet.
Todd and I,
Frank and I were both vaxxed.
the day before we got on the bus and left.
And in my state, I didn't
really?
meet the
You
can believe it,
criteria yet. So there was like so I missed missed it by about 2 weeks. And so I didn't realize that basically everything you hear, most everything you hear on the record vocally were scratch tracks. Those were sung as guides. I was in a separate room. These guys were playing live. And so I was singing live and just thinking we were going to recut the vocals later. And that what'd you say?
That's not what Dave was thinking.
Yeah. Well, he
Talk into
kept
the mic so we can hear
he
you.
kept
That's I purposely did.
yeah.
He said that's not what Dave is thinking.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
And he kept saying, and after we'd stop a take, he's like, "That's great, great. I think we'll be able to keep some of that." And I'm like, "What, really?" And so it was kind of a surprise to me because that's not normally the way producers do it. But at the end of the day, there was really no choice because once the virus took over, it really got difficult to sing. And the last song I tracked in the studio was Rivers Rising. And you can hear, I think I only made it through one pass. And I finally just had to bow and say, you know what, you guys are gonna have to finish this without me because I got no juice left. So that was really a bit of a challenge, but I was really surprised that he was able to salvage I would use the vocals. So it was
It
great.
came out sounding awesome.
Yeah, but you know what's incredible about that? Even if it wasn't COVID, that probably would have been the case because told me a totally similar story, and this was long before COVID. But Dave Cobb produced a record by a band called California Breed. That was Andrew Watt, Glenn Hughes, and Jason Bonham. And yeah, that's his record. Yeah, and I said to Glenn when I interviewed Glenn for that record, I go, Glenn's an incredible singer, and he goes, you know what's crazy about that? He goes, I thought they were just scratch vocals, and we're done. And Dave said that's the keeper, and I guess that's the thing with him, man. So now you're on guard for
I'm
the
on
next
to him
time.
now.
How about for you guys down on the end? How the experience of making this record, the rhythm section down there with Todd and Brent, tracking like that and recording like that?
It was very much the same thing. I mean, honestly, we were doing it without headphones, without click tracks, completely like Myles is saying. It's all while you're doing it, you're kind of like, should we be doing it like this? Because we've been doing it the other way for so many years. That like, for me, I'm generally the kind of guy. I prepare my stuff. I know I'm going to play. I go and I play it. When we're putting down, if we're just focusing on a drum track, I'm still thinking like, I want to play a bass track that's keepable. So the mindset was not much different for me at all. But I don't know what it was like for Brent.
It was really loud, and it was great. In a way, I'm used to loud. I'm the drummer, but everything was bleeding. Yeah. And I mean, mics into all amps and drums, and it kind of was effective for a real great live sounding record. And then the only thing is, it's when you're committing to that, doing overdubs is not necessarily that easy. So what you're hearing is that raw studio performance, and everything's in that one room. So I think it really has, you can listen. I mean, I'm thinking the vinyl experience is going to be really cool on this record too. So
because it's live, you also don't want to be the one guy to screw up the take because everything's going to tape. So I know we'd be all kind of like, well, here we go. It's just
That's what I loved about it was the most raw form of this band, and how even now when we're rehearsing, we look back and we're like, we didn't even rehearse this album. You usually go in, you have it.
Yeah, that was the other thing is we went in really loosely prepared. So the songs, the arrangements weren't like maybe half to 65% finished. So usually we rehearse the shit out of everything, go into the studio, jam it really quick, and it's done because we know all the parts. But we did a lot of writing in the studio, just getting the arrangements together and fine tuning some of that stuff.
Well,
like
you
the
mentioned
fast solo for River is Rising was on the.
It was
in
an
the
outro,
moment, wasn't it? It was kind of the outro, and then it was decided like, let's make that the solo.
Yeah,
okay.
and there was no solo on it, so we just made it up.
Well,
on the
that's
spot.
okay. So first of all, when you talk about the way you did the writing of it, when you mentioned Rival Sons, who are one of my favorite bands as well, those guys are in there with Dave forever because they actually just go in with no ideas and figure it out as they're going. Like they'll be in and out of there 4 or 5 times trying to write stuff. So that's a unique way of working. But when I heard The River is Rising, which everybody's going to hear an exclusive live performance of in a second. But when I heard that song, that fast part that comes in out of nowhere, I mean, it reminded me of Paradise City in the way the fast part comes at the end. But it seemed like it was that a different song? And you're like, let's put those together.
It's how I wrote it,
Mike.
Oh yeah. It's how I wrote it, the music part, right? It was how I demoed it up. But the thing is there wasn't a fast part in the middle. That didn't exist. And so it was in Nashville that we came up with the idea to, I think Dave said, well, we need to reintroduce that fast part. It's too cool, man. Yeah. And so that's what we did. We made the guitar solo out of it.
Overall, the writing of this record, how did it work between the two of you, Myles and Slash? Like, the ideas for this, some of them go back a little ways? Did you come together and specifically write the record? How did that work, especially against the backdrop of COVID and you doing so much with Guns? I mean,
Right.
and Myles doing solo record and everything he was doing. Where did it all fit in?
Well, we wrote half of it. We wrote on the road during the Living the Dream tour. And so we would go into sound checks and we'd work up these ideas. So we had sort of basic ideas about half of the songs then. And then during COVID, I decided I wanted to start working on the record. I couldn't get together with these guys in jam, so I started making demos. And even with the little keyboard drum machine and that whole bit. And so so I'm working on the old songs, and then I was also writing new songs. So some of the new songs that I came up with are on here as well. And then I just sent the demos to Myles, and Myles would come up with his ideas, and some of them are old melodies from the old songs, and then new stuff.
Myles, the writing partnership between you guys is Slash the music guy and you're the lyric guy in this situation? Is it pretty much cut right down that line?
Yeah, generally speaking, he finishes the music bed, sends it to me, and I put the melody and lyric to it. Occasionally, if I hear something where, like, let's insert this part here, like for the sake of the melody, like I'm hearing a chorus here that with this chord progression, but that that's not often. But generally, yeah, that's how it works. He sets up the. It's kind of like a sonic, boomerang.
Well, but the chorus for Rivers Rising is a good example of a just full-on collaboration, because I had a chorus, but melodically he added those changes into it, and then I changed what he had into a riff. So it was total collaboration on what that chorus sounds like now.
Myles, has he ever sent you music and an idea for a song and you've listened to it and you're like, I don't know what to do with this, like I don't know where to take this? Have you had those where you're like, I can't, maybe this should be an instrumental?
Safari Inn.
Safari Inn.
Safari Inn, is that which is an instrumental?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other than that, no. That's he understands, because he's such a melody guy, he understands writing a chord progression or riff that is open enough for a singer to come in and put his melody, or he or she or whatever. So it's definitely,
It's very politically correct.
it's definitely I don't run into that issue with him. Right. No.
All right, well, let's hear a little bit of the current single from the new album 4, done live. And we just talked a little bit about this song and how it came together and the fast part in it. And it's fascinating to hear how this stuff is created. This is The River is Rising, done live by Slash, featuring Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators from the new album 4. Back with more with the guys right after you check out the tune.